So you might like this, Rev. I mean, CJ Stroud has been a talk in minicamp in the offseason because there was concern about his shoulder. He came out and he said he's fine. That's going to be all good. But there's a lot of new life in the Texans facility. They fired Bobby Slowick and they brought in some replacements, Nick Caley. They brought in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. The offensive line had a little bit of an overhaul too. Who's to say?
In the wide receiver room.
It's in a positive direction, but they look better. And they also saw Nick Chubb, who can be a good complementary back to Joe Mixon. So this is a team that
I'm excited about that.
On paper, we're looking at the Texans, and I mean, last year we thought were
nothing.
they going to be a top 5 offense? But maybe this year might be the year that they reach their potential.
Their offensive line's still not good. Am I mistaken?
It's definitely young, and it's definitely not mistaken. It's definitely a shoot in the dark.
Like,
hopefully, it can
I don't
get
know
better.
If the offense,
But
we'll see.
I will say this. I'm excited. I'm excited about Texas
Definitely
football.
should be.
My third favorite team.
You need help.
No, I am excited though. Listen, CJ Stroud.
Yeah,
You
you
should stop. You.
He's valid when it
I
comes
don't
to
got great
football.
fair football
When it
teams.
comes to football, he is valid.
Listen. Stop. Let me talk about my team in peace.
His
Thank you
third
very
favorite
much.
team.
Thank you very much. They are my third favorite team. You know how I feel about
I know,
CJ Stroud.
I know, I
I
know.
know how I feel.
Bryce Young got it.
Bryce Young what?
He gonna get it this year.
You fucking listen. I like Carolina.
I
like
know.
Carolina. Yeah, but I'm excited. You know, they got a little overhaul in the wide receiving department. They got a little younger. They missed Nico Collins last year. Missed him huge. Even missed Stephon Diggs when he went down.
Fact.
You know, and then missed Tank Dell. You know, I just think not having those guys all season while also having a beat up bad offensive line really put CJ Stroud in a tough position, and then Bobby Slowick also didn't have a great year himself. But also CJ Stroud wasn't making the best decisions himself. I think in totality, the offense could have been better, and it wasn't. The lone bright spot is like Joe Mixon had 1,000 yards. It's like that's cool or whatever. But
very inefficiently too.
Yeah, like
fell off too at the
bringing in Nick Chubb was dope. See what he still has left in the tank.
Please be
They definitely brought in Jaden
Fantasy team
Higgins.
needs
Nico Collins is gonna be back.
Your boy Noel.
Noel is there.
He's amazing.
Joel has spoke highly about him. I'm gonna believe you this time again. We'll see how that goes. But for the most part, you feel good about Houston once because you have a defense that you can kind of ride on. Like you have a defense that is legit. It's elite. Number two, your division is one of the worst divisions in football. Let's just call it how it is. The Colts, we don't know how their quarterback position is gonna look with AR, with Daniel Jones. The Tennessee Titans are in full rebuild mode. You like what the Jaguars have done this offseason, but that's still a wait and see what they're going to look like. So for the most part, the Texans could be looking at a third year where they win the division. But in the AFC, where you have the big four, you have a couple other quarterbacks that are really good. CJ Stroud has stepped up and be one of those guys. And I think also his infrastructure needs to improve. And I think in the wide receiving department, it's young, it's flashy, it's a little bit more exciting. You have a new offensive coordinator. There's definitely something to feel good about because you felt like last year you walked in with a lot of expectations, a lot of excitement. You kind of got humbled a little bit throughout the regular season. Now you've made adjustments. You still have D'Amico Ryans, who I think is a really good coach. I like what I see from Houston. As long as CJ Stroud is healthy, I think he's still one of the 10 best quarterbacks in football. I still think he can give you a hell of a season. Hopefully you can get a productive – and I'm not asking for them to be elite. I don't think nobody's asking for that offensive line to be elite. I just think they need to be average. You know, average to okay.
I'd love if they were elite.
Like I would love that too.
If
but
they were elite,
I
might be talking about them as contenders.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. But
No
I think
bull.
that's asking for too much.
I agree.
Right now,
100%.
I think just getting average to good is something you're expecting. And then they're young. Like that offensive line is really young, so that's definitely a lot to ask for. But if you get them, if you can see just try an average offensive line, and then you can get maybe some average run blocking, you can get a solid running back group going with Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. You can get your receivers going. You have Nico Collins, you're good. Like you're legitimately
This
good.
is 2018. We'd be in the moon.
Yo, talk. And then, CJ Stroud can make things work. So I'm excited for the Houston Texans. And of course, the division stinks. So I have nothing to worry about.
It was a weird year last season where it was like a down season.
He was top 7 in EPA weeks 1 to 7.
They won the division last year and won a playoff game in a season where most people looked at as a down year. And I felt like this year they made a lot of very good under the radar moves this all season. Where of course your wide receiver room was deep last
He's a Nico
year.
merchant. You should think.
Sorry. Their wide receiver room was deep last year, but including Nico, their entire wide receiver room was decimated by injury. You bring in Christian Kirk, you draft Jaden Higgins, who I like a lot out of Iowa State, and then you draft Jalen Noel as well. And their offense line's a big question, but you bring in Cam Robinson, you move Titus Howard in the left guard, and there's some guys there where, big question marks.
It's a terrible offensive line.
Jesus.
A lot to hope for.
But you do hope that ideally it can only get better because last year, the last 2 years, it's dealt with a lot of injuries. It's the belief of continuity and just internal growth within. That's going to have to be something which is important to monitor with this team. But the defense is what gives them a very high floor in this division. So I'm optimistic with the Texans team. I think it comes down to them, much like we talk about the Bengals, though, just being able to protect their quarterback. And with the new offensive coordinator coming in, I feel like they're going to have a better season this year. And what I'm really excited to see is how Christian Kirk meshes in and those young wide receivers as well. In the event that Nico does miss time, I think Jaden Higgins stylistically can really step up. And I think they've got a lot of options this offense to be excited.
I feel like last year from like week 7 on, that was like as bad as it can get. And they still like won the division. So
exactly, it was a down year.
Yeah, that's why I feel good. And again, they won a playoff game.
And they gave the Chiefs an amazing game.
It was a good game. Yeah, so I'm definitely optimistic. Like the offensive line doesn't look pretty. It's a work in progress, but I'm optimistic.
But I think a lot of that is scheme. I do think that with the offensive line being that bad, like the offensive line didn't have the talent, of course, and I think this offensive line will have its fair share of struggles. Mm-hmm. But overall, I thought the biggest problem with the Texans last year was their inability to adapt game to game.
And penalties.
There's been players that came out and they spoke about this offense and they said teams would shut us down on what we did and we wouldn't adjust to it. And it showed in the first half and second half numbers. In the first half, the Texans were a top 10 scoring offense. In the second half, they just scored 7.5 points. In the second half, that was the worst in the NFL. And I'm looking at CJ Stroud and just Texans offense and how it performed. Not only do I think the Texans, they're going to win the division easily. I think they're going to finish number 1. They're going to be in another playoff game. And I think CJ Stroud not only is a great quarterback, I think he's an elite tier quarterback. Like I think he can walk into that sphere this year. Last year, the stats didn't show it. But I look at the situation that he dealt with. The offense was 31st in success rate. One of the least successful offenses in the NFL. And in West Coast systems, oftentimes quarterbacks aren't allowed to change protections because you get the ball out of your hands so fast that you're supposed to read the coverage, so the center usually reads the protections, and they're the ones that set it. There is a lot of cons to that because sometimes the center isn't good at setting protections, and sometimes just your protection plan is very predictable, and the Texans was. They had 52 unblocked pressures last year, which was the second most in the NFL. And in the playoff game, CJ Stroud got pressured 56% of the time, which was the second most since ESPN started tracking that stat back in 2009. That's how bad of an offensive line and plan the Texans had overall. I look at teams across the league that they can have a bad offensive line and still be a very predictive offense. We just saw it with the Cincinnati Bengals. They had an elite offense despite having a terrible offensive line. And I look at the Texans with Nico Collins, an elite receiver, Jaden Higgins, who's 6'4", boundary receiver. The red zone threats with him and Nico is going to be huge. And then Jalen Noel, Dalton Schultz, and having Mixon and Nick Chubb. I think they have enough.
Christian Kirk, can't forget about him.
Yeah, I did forget about him, but he's also a very talented player. Nick Caley is not just somebody I'm high on. It's somebody that I think can be a head coach one day. I think he's that great of an offensive mind. He was brought into the Rams 2 years ago, but his claim to fame was he was with the Patriots for 8 years, and he learned in that system. And people like to label him as some type of like Sean McVay. Just because you hung with the genius doesn't mean you are a genius. But he was brought into the Rams offense to change their identity because when they had Todd Gurley, they were an outside zone running team. They weren't a gap team. There's a difference between being a gap and a zone rushing team. A gap team is you're blocking bodies. A zone team, you're blocking space. So he was brought into the Rams to lead that transition. And they jumped from using man blocking concepts 25% of the time to 52% of the time. That was first in the NFL. And they dropped from zone usage from 10th to 20th. He turned around their entire philosophy. And the big thing is that he is giving CJ Stroud freedom at the line to change protections. So even with the offensive line being bad, and I think it will show, we will see CJ Stroud be more of a leader and change protections to his liking. And I think that will make the offense function at a much higher rate. So I think even with the personnel on the offensive line not being better than last year, I think overall we're going to see a rejuvenated offense. And with the amount of receivers they have, with CJ Stroud being as smart of a quarterback as he is, I think we're going to see a big season from this Texans offense.
Yeah, we're winning division.
I guess the only reservation would be for me being the receivers being as young as they are. You don't know what they're going to be until obviously we see them go on the field and produce, hopefully. But definitely there's things to be excited about when you look at the Texans. The defense is obviously number one. We could be talking about a top 5 unit in the league. And Riv, I think you said it best. They really were underwhelming for what we were anticipating coming into the season. and they still won a playoff game. And nobody really had them winning that game versus the Chargers. I think all of us took the Chargers to win. Yeah, facts. And they dominated them.
The defense wins games.
100%. And that's kind of my philosophy for the Texans coming in this season, because you do have CJ Stroud, who is one of the upper echelon guys. You do have Nico Collins, who is one of the upper echelon guys. You just need to be above average, considering your defense is one of the elite units in the league. And you can still win your division pretty comfortably and still have a chance to win a playoff game, or maybe even two. It's going to be a really fun season for them if their offense can really figure it out, like Joel is saying. It's just a matter of what you're going to get from the young guys. What version of Joe Mixon are we getting? What version of Nick Chubb are we getting? Nico Collins, can you just stay on the field for us? Christian Kirk, can you stay on the field for us? There's just a lot of questions for this offense that, if they are healthy, if this offensive coordinator is as good as advertised, this can be one of the pop teams of the 2025 season.
Their receiving room is just so talented. Like, I know Higgins and Noel, they're unproven. If any team had drafted either of those receivers, I would have been like, wow, that was a great pick. And the Texans drafted both of them. Yep. Like, Jalen Noel is a slot guy. He plays Christian Kirk's role, so I think he'll eat into his snaps. He might not be as statistically productive as Jaden Higgins, but Jaden Higgins is a fluid mover. He's 6'4". He can contest a catch. I mean, he's awesome.
Yep, like Bills, Texans, NFC Championship.
They have the ability to be one of the best wide receiver rooms in football. Like, I think they're that talented with Nico, Jaden, and Noel. And then you have Kirk. So I think that this year we could see a big resurgence in their wide receiver room.
And it's crazy how deep it was and how good it was last year. And it was decimated by injuries. They completely overhauled it. And now it's like you're bulletproof in the event. Nico misses a few games. You have a rookie that can step up. Kirk's not healthy. You have another rookie that can be productive. And then who knows what happens to Tank Till. I hope he eventually comes back. Hope he gets back in the field as soon as possible, because he's been a really great player, especially his rookie year.
And also with what you're saying, Joel, it kind of seems to me like they're going all in on this guy's philosophy, because I say all in where you traded Laramie Tunsil, your franchise left tackle. You feel really confident that this guy can come in and still make your guys' offensive line better than what it was last year. Yeah. That's a lot of blind faith. Yep. And sometimes you're rewarded with that, but sometimes it blows up in your face, and that's a fear.
Yeah, it's just very hard to be worse than what they were last year.
2 years. 2 years. Even CJ's rookie years.
It's not only the lack of the adjustments, and I guess this goes hand in hand with that. It's just the predictable play calling. On first down, it'd be a run. On second down, it'd be a run.
That's like
CJ on third and down. He faced some of the most third and longs in the league last year. And you put your quarterback in a bad position with the bad offensive line that's vulnerable. So I think that Nick Haley is going to do a tremendous job, and I really think that there's going to be a bounce back season. But this division is not tough, like you mentioned, and that's why I think they're kind of like, they are the AFC's version of the NFC South, where if you have a functional organization, you have an elite pillar of your team, you can make the playoffs. And that's what the Buccaneers have done in that division for the past couple of years, too.
It should be year 3 of them winning division.
I also think that's why we saw the Jaguars be as aggressive as they were on draft day, going from 5-2, try and get Travis, because they understand that division's not good. And they have arguably the best quarterback, which of course people are still going to take CJ, but you are building something on that offense. When you bring in Liam Cohen, you have BTJ. Now you go and you bring in Travis Hunter. There are definitely some things to be excited about if you are a Jaguars fan.